A special meeting of Killaloe Municipal District, which is held to review and approve the DRAFT Inis Cealtra, Holy Island and Knockaphort Pier Bye-Laws prior to public consultation. There was a focus on preventing illegal overnight parking and illegal camping. So to discuss all of this, I'm joined on the line by the Whitegate Fine Gael Councillor Pat Burke and the Sixmilebridge Fianna Fáil Councillor Alan O'Callaghan, and you're both very welcome to the programme. And maybe, Pat, you can kick us off by just highlighting for the listeners in more detail the issues that have been arising in recent years that have prompted the drafting of these bylaws.
Yes, good morning, Alan. Both two Alans. Yes, last summer this was brought to the fore, if you like, when illegal camping took place on Holy Island, and I suppose antisocial behaviour and maybe drinking and that type of thing from people who not from the area at all, but who decided to visit Holy Island for the wrong reasons, I suppose. And there was quite upset. People were quite upset in the area and that with this. So I remember at the time, last August, contacting the tourism section in Clare County Council and calling for something to be done about this. So there hadn't been bylaws in place. So because we approved the draft bylaws at yesterday's meeting now, hopefully when they come into being later on in the summer, that it'll restrict people from carrying out illegal activity, I suppose, both on the island and at Knockaphort as well.
Yeah, and Alan, the bylaws prohibit things like lighting fires, interfering with masonry structures, disturbing graves, littering or damaging flora and fauna, which I guess would lead one to assume that there have been incidents of this type of damage before, or perhaps not. And just how vulnerable is Inis Cealtra or Holy Island to erosion or vandalism?
Absolutely, and I suppose it's a holy sacred place, and I suppose we want to develop. Clare County Council wants to develop it going forward, and I suppose this is a document this now in that will be put in place in order to be able to, I suppose, deal with situations that we have the bylaws in place to be able to deal with. As Pat so rightly said, illegal encampments, people lighting fires and just going onto the island for being mischief or whatever and that kind of stuff, But I suppose we need a document and we need bylaws in place to be able to deal with that if that reoccurs again. But I suppose it's more so that people it won't affect any of the locals there. It won't affect the farmers or the anglers or anything like that. But it's just the people that come and park overnight and they were carrying stuff onto the island as well, and supposed to bylaws to be able to deal with all that. And in the event of something arising, and these will come into place by the 1st of July, and they'll go out for public consultation, be advertised next week in the paper. And I suppose to be able to deal with that, because it's a sacred place, and it's a pity to see it being burnt and that kind of stuff on the island,
Yeah, and Pat, the illegal overnight parking in Knockaphort Pier, the fine for overnight parking is €40, rising to 60 if unpaid, and up to €1,000 on conviction. Do you believe those penalties are strong enough to act as a deterrent?
Yeah, I think they should be. When signage goes up and when the word goes out that that there are bylaws in place, and the local authority, in conjunction with the Gardaí, have the powers to challenge these people that are parking illegally, and that I think it should deter that activity, regardless of the monetary value of the fine, the fact that there hadn't been bylaws in place, and now, as I said, if they're hopefully implemented, this is going out now to public consultation. We approved the draft bylaws yesterday, so there's a public consultation period from the 26th of February to the 2nd of April, and the hope is then that they'll be approved at a full council meeting in May and come into being then, I think, on the 1st of July, all going well, depending on the public consultation period, I suppose, and what may come forward there. But as Councillor O'Callaghan rightly said there, this is in no way interfering with local practice, of people visiting the island. There are 2 graveyards out there for people to visit the graves of family members or loved ones, and these bylaws in no way interfere with any of that activity. People driving down to Knockaphort and taking their boat out to visit the island, coming back and leaving there again, as the locals do, be they fishermen or people visiting the island to visit graves or to visit the island itself. So none of the locals here or fishermen or anything like that have any fears here with these bylaws. It's just these people who come from distances or wherever they come from, and particularly last August, and decided to make a home on the island, if you like. So that's not acceptable at all, and that's why these bylaws are now being put in place. And just we called in yesterday as well to look at other areas along the lake where there's illegal camping and wild camping and that. So we'll be monitoring those this summer as well. This is a start of implementing bylaws to do with Holy Island and Knockaphort, but there are other areas along the shore of Lough Derg as well that we'll need to look at going forward. Hopefully we won't have to, but we'll be monitoring them this summer.
Yeah, I'll be interested, Alan, to see during the public consultation period what kind of opinions and suggestions are expressed. I would imagine there would be near universal support for these draft bylaws, given, as Pat has touched on, there will be people, locals, who'll have loved ones buried out on Holy Island, and they will take what's happening, give a very dim view of it.
Yeah, well, I'd encourage the people to have a look at the bylaws themselves, and the Clare County Council are taking submissions up until the 2nd of April on the bylaws. But I suppose, there's a lot of, you have national monuments out there, as you say, you have graves, and I suppose it's an island, obviously, so people need to get out there on boats and stuff like that. But hopefully, we don't want to turn it into a place where people can kind of jump onto this island for the weekend and kind of hang out there and as you said, light fires and get up to all kinds of mischief around the place and leave rubbish and dirt behind them, and that's not the purpose of this island, and that's where we want to try and alleviate and stop, and to have the power in the documents to be able to stop that once and for all. If it does, hopefully it won't happen again, but at least we have our paperwork, we have our ducks in a row, for want of a better word, to be able to deal with that then if something does happen. Because as Pat said, there's people buried out there. It's going to be a jewel for us in East Clare going forward. Inis Cealtra as a visitor centre, it's a very sensitive area, and we'd like to try and keep it that way. And we're working, it's for council, even for Clare County Council, to do works out there. Do you know what I mean? It's a sensitive area, and you do it as sensitive as you can, just to stop this problem going forward, and to have something in place so we can get them removed or get them fined and stop them once and for all. That's the purpose behind this. I
do wonder though, Pat, do you think there's a balance that needs to be struck between obviously protecting Inis Cealtra but also encouraging tourism in East Clare? I just wonder, do you think that perhaps stricter rules could have the negative consequence of discouraging visitors, or do you believe they'll actually enhance the visitor experience?
I would hope that would enhance the visitor experience, Alan. The designated boat trips to the island are from Mount Shannon Harbour, not from Knockaphort at all. The Knockaphort Pier is used by local fishermen and local people going out to the island. The Mount Shannon Harbour then is where Germadden is operating there last summer, and again this year going forward in conjunction with the council, and the visitor centre that the Mount Shannon Harbour is for the visitors to use, if you like. Tourists to the area will get a boat there to go out to the island and won't be going near Knockaphort at all. So the Knockaphort, as I said, is mainly used by the locals, as and funerals, etc. And that's the way it should be. So, overnight camping and parking is happening at other locations along the lake shore as well. But I suppose the fact that people last August, and I'm not sure what sort of a boat they had, or how they had their kayaks, or how they got out to the island and brought out, food supplies or whatever, and camped there for a couple of days. That's why we're bringing in these bylaws now, and why we're talking about them here this morning, to restrict that, or to deter that anyway. So I suppose enforcement will be the thing if it were to happen again. The community warden, litter warden, will be maybe first on the scene, then followed by the Gardaí or vice versa, to make sure that these people aren't allowed to stay on the island or camp at Knockaphort. So, we're looking forward to the tourist season now opening up in the next couple of months, Alan, I suppose, and looking forward to the visitor centre being busy again and bringing more people. And a lot of people visited there last year, and Germadden is there available to take people to the island, and that's the way it should be. It's not a place, as Alan O'Callaghan said, for not that anywhere is a place for antisocial behaviour, but particularly in Inis Cealtra or Holy Island, has to be preserved, and that kind of carry on isn't welcome at all.
Yeah, you touched on enforcement though, Pat, and that will be a key issue to see how comprehensive that enforcement is, because it is one thing bringing the bylaws in, but will there be increased patrols or signage, and particularly when you take into account, as you said, you'd be hoping to bring in similar bylaws for other areas along the river where similar type of antisocial behaviour is going on. That will that make enforcement more difficult, spread out over a larger area?
Yeah, and the fact that it's an island, I suppose, to be fair, it won't be patrolled on a daily basis or anything like that, but it's when and if an issue arises that the enforcement will come into play. When I speak about other areas here beside me, we have Dramane Harbour, a public harbour where lots of activity there in the harbour itself by boating people out on the lake, come in there and stay overnight on their boats and that. But then, unfortunately, I notice, more so at bank holiday weekends in the summertime, people come from various places around the country and camp there, and jet skis and antisocial behaviour, and there's residents living close by and they're up in arms about this because it's such a peaceful location. Normally it's very disappointing then that we get these people who come and flout the law. There's a sign there, and I've asked the Director of Services for Tourism to check out what a sign that says no camping or overnight parking by order of Clare County Council. The sign is there about 30 years at this stage, and nobody pays heed to it. So that's what I mentioned when I said I'll be monitoring that location this summer, because it's here beside me, to see that we may have to introduce stricter bylaws at those locations as well, which are easier to patrol then, whereas the island, as we said, is different in that, to get out to the island, it won't be patrolled on a daily basis or anything like that. But the bylaws will be in place at the same time, which should strengthen, the powers, the local authority to cut out this kind of behaviour. Yeah. And just to remind the locals again, like to when the draft bylaws go out on public display, have a look at them, see is there anything there, and make submissions, but just to remind people that this won't interfere in any way with local activity, so that's important to say. Yeah,
what do you think in terms of enforcement, Alan? I mean, it's all well and good bringing these bylaws in, but particularly if they come in for other areas along the river, will it make it more difficult, and particularly in relation to Inis Cealtra, because it's an island, as Pat says, it's going to be very difficult to strictly enforce these bylaws?
Well, I suppose, yeah, but at least I suppose we need the documents in place first in the event of something that does happen, that we are able to deal with it accordingly, and we have that document there to be able to deal with such like that. And as Pat rightly said, like, it's people can come up the lake as well and get on without even coming by road or whatever. But I suppose we need something there to be able to deal with the situation if it does arise again, like what happened last year. And I suppose this is the reason for the bylaws. As we said, there won't be someone out there every day checking it or something like that. But in the event of something raising its head, well, then we have the power to be able to deal with it and be able to instruct, we said, the Gardaí, and there is, if there is a court proceeding, that we have everything in place to be able to prosecute these people if it does occur again. But that's the most important part,
Okay, well,
sorry, Alan. Yeah, Alan O'Callaghan is right there, because this was the problem last August when local people went out and found these other people camping on the island. They had no powers. I mean, they told them you can't be here, but they probably got the two fingers. Sure, who says we can't be here? Whereas this document now will, local people will be able to say, well, okay, we're contacting the guards now or the local authorities. So this is what this document will do, hopefully.
Okay, well, as you say, the public consultation period open from the 26th of this month until the 6th of April. Gents, thank you very much to both of you for joining us on that.